Hello, in this video, we're going to talk about writing linear equations in point-slope form. We're going to start with some review problems. So go ahead and pause the video and try this problem, and then we're going to kind of talk through it quickly. So this first one, remember to use the slope formula. Watch your negative signs, especially on the bottom, and you should get 1/2. And here is the next one. So graph that line using an XY chart. So pick a couple points, pause the video, and do so. And here I picked the points 0, 1, and 2. If you want to rearrange things, you can. Probably a little quicker if you subtract 2 from both sides first. But you can also just plug the number directly into x and simplify, and in this case, solve by subtracting 2 from both sides. You also can notice the line has this y-intercept of -2, which matches this, and a slope of -2 as well, which when you subtract that over is true when you solve for a slope-intercept form. Okay, the next one, go ahead and pause and graph this line. And here, the slope is -3. There is no the y-intercept is 0, sorry. It's not there, so b is equal to 0. And the line looks like this. Remember, your y-intercept is where you start, and then you can count down 3 over 1 in this case. And if I can get the page turned, I can do the next one. Let's see. Okay, so graph this line using x and y intercepts. Go ahead and pause the video, give it a try. And here this is, you can use the cover-up method if you want. So if you plug in 0 for x, just cover that up and divide both sides by -2 to get -7 for y. And then cover up the -2y, divide by 7 to get 2 for x. And that gives you your line. So there's a lot of different methods to graph lines. And we're going to look at one more in this video, which is point-slope form. Point-slope form, in my opinion, is a little underrated, right? It's quick. It's valuable. There is not a lot of work to do with point-slope form, but it's not nearly as popular as slope-intercept form. So people love y equals mx plus b form. It's like the way to write lines, but point-slope form gives you what I would argue maybe more information in a more efficient way. So what this is m is the slope, and then x1 and y1 are any point on the line. So x1, y1. And this little subscript, this is called a subscript when the number's like below the line. This is confusing for people, and it's worth spending some time thinking about. It does not mean something mathematical. So it's not like y times 1. It is the whole variable y1. So it's the way we refer to a point. And you see it in the slope formula, so maybe you're a little used to it. But it's not its own variable. It's not like a value. It's just saying that this is the first y we're talking about and the first x we're talking about. So we could use like h and k here. That'd be fine, right? It could just be a different variable. But for point-slope form, typically we use x1 and y1, and that is any point on the line. And another key here is notice that this minus sign and minus sign is here. So what a negative sign or minus sign means in math is the opposite, or do the different thing. So we're going to put a little asterisk here and say always change the sign. So whether you're finding the point from the formula or putting the point into the formula, you're always going to change the sign. And it's just a really easy thing to forget, really easy thing to mess up. Okay, so to find an equation in point-slope form, all we need is slope, which is a common theme throughout writing equations of lines. We always think about slope first, and then a point on the line. So slope and a point. Okay, so here we have a slope, so m is 2, and we have a point. So we can write our equation. So y is y, And then I'm going to use the y value for y1, and I'm going to change the sign. So instead of positive 4, it's going to be negative 4. M I'm told is 2. X is x. And then the x1, the point is 1. And so it's going to be negative 1. Remember to change the sign. And then you're done. There's nothing else to do. It's great. It's in point slope form. If you wanted slope intercept form, you could get there. We could distribute the 2 and then add 4. But we don't need to do that because that's an equation of a line. Okay, and pause the video and try this next one. Okay, so notice once again you're given slope and a point. So we have m and then x1 and y1. It doesn't matter which point you use for x1 and y1 as long as the x and y come from the same point that's on the line. Okay, so write an equation, y is y. And then in this case, y1 is 3, so it's minus 3. Remember, you change the sign. M is m. That sign stays. And then x is negative 2, so that'd be x plus 2. Okay, here's one that's a little different, but I think you can do it. So try this one. Just think you need a slope and a point. Slope, you have to use the slope formula. So we're going to do y2 minus y1, so negative 7 minus 3. You really watch your signs on the slope formula. It's so easy to mess it up. And also make sure your y stays on top. So minus negative 1 is subtracting the x values. So this looks like negative 10 over 5, which is negative 2. So my slope is negative 2. Oh, that was weird. And I can pick a point, right? It doesn't matter which one. So there's 2 right answers here, and then you could even find more if you wanted to. But so we can do either one of those. Let's start with I'll write them both here because it won't take long. But y is y, and then I'm going to do plus 1. Whoop, that's the x value. So careful with that because the x value comes first in the point, but the y value comes first in the equation. So let's just scratch that. Say whoops, and we'll start again. So y is y, and then you do minus 3, and then m is negative 2, and then x is x, and then it's plus 1. So notice the signs change. So that's one equation, and that's good, right? Like you could be done. Just in case you wanted to do the other point, we'll write that out quick. So it'd be y plus 7. And then the slope is still negative 2, and x is still x, and then it's minus 4. So either one of those are right. One is not better than the other. One is not more correct than the other. Okay, from a graph, the same kind of thing. You got to find the slope. If you can count it off, great. If you need to use a formula, that's fine too. And then just find a point, and then write the equation. So this is why slope-intercept form is so great. Point-slope form is so great because the steps are a little shorter. Right? You don't have quite as much information to manipulate. Okay, so I'm going to find the slope first. And I know I said this is identify a point. See, I always like starting off with the slope. Start off with the slope because that's the same in every single equation of the line you write. Think about the slope first. So I'm going to go down 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope is negative 1/4. Now, a good idea with slope, if you have a graph, is make sure it matches all the time. So this line is slanting down, so my slope should be negative. Okay, that's good. I did something right. It's also a little flatter than the slope of 1, and so it should be less than 1, which is good too. Okay, and then I'm going to use this point right here. So we just got to figure out what that is. Negative 1, 1, 2, 3. If you use the other point, that's fine. So it's negative 1, negative 3 is the point I'm using. So y is y, and then plus 3 because you have to change the sign. Slope is negative 1/4, x is x, and then plus 1 because once again you have to change the sign. If you use this point, it would be positive for both of them, and it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'd be plus 5 here and plus 2 here. Okay, and we can also graph from point-slope form. So there's kind of 2 ways people graph from point-slope form, and we're going to do the first Actually, on the first problem, we'll do both ways. And then the rest of them, we're just going to do the shortest way. So like I said, people love slope-intercept form. So something people will do is they'll change this to slope-intercept form before you graph. It's one more step. And sometimes it doesn't work out so nicely depending on like fractions and things. But it is an option. And so if you want to do that, it's great. It's, it gives you more practice with some of this, algebra skills and solving equations, but it's also not necessary. So we'll do this both ways. We'll start with the quick way, which is just to follow the steps here. So first, identify the slope. So m is equal to 3 because that's this value here. And then my point, look at the number next to x is 1. And remember, you have to change the sign. It's kind of tough to see, but there's a minus there. Look at the number next to y, which is 2. And you have to change the sign. So now typically you start at the y-intercept and count off when you're graphing lines. But we're going to start at 1, 2. So go over 1 up 2. And then put your point there and then kind of like refresh, right? Like pick up your pencil, think about it again, and say, okay, well, I'm going to put my pencil back down here, and my slope is 3. So from here, you go up 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1. All right, let's go the other way. Let's go 1, 2, 3 over 1, because that'll kind of help illustrate the next point. But you really only need 2 points. And my line is not very straight, but hopefully yours is straighter than that. But you get the idea. There's the line. So the other option we mentioned is you could write this in slope-intercept form. And so you could distribute this. So you get y minus 2 is equal to 3x. And be careful that you remember to distribute. So minus 3. And then we want to add 2 to both sides to get y by itself. So y is equal to 3x and then minus 1. Okay, so let's compare that to our line. We have a y-intercept of -1. That's our initial point. And then we count up 3 over 1. And so we have the same points. So like I said, there's 2 methods for doing this. This one has a couple more chances to make mistakes, but it gets you with something that a lot of times people are more comfortable with. So if you want to go back to using slope-intercept form on every line, that is okay. You just have to be comfortable with changing forms. Like I said, sometimes it's not as easy because you could end up with some fractions where typically, like at this level in Algebra 1, we try not to write a lot of fractions in your problem. And so like C would be an example. C, you'd end up with a fraction for your y-intercept, if I'm looking at it right. Yeah, and so that's kind of tricky to deal with. Okay, so we're just going to do the next 2 using the point slope method. So pause the video, try them, and then we'll talk through them. Okay, so your slope, I'm going to write it down here. Let's see, and I wonder if you can see that other one. Here's that one in case my face is in the way. Okay, so let's look at here. The slope is m is equal to 2 over 3. And then the point, now be really careful with the point. You have to remember to change the sign. The point is 3, -4. And I would recommend writing both of these things down, especially the point. I know you can think about it in your head, but even if you're just like looking at this and thinking about it, it could be that you think, okay, I got to change the sign. It's 3, but then you count left 3 because you look at the -3. So definitely show this step here. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 and down 1, 2, 3, 4 and put a point there. And I'm going to pick my pencil up to just kind of reset my brain. And then I'm going to think, I'm thinking about slope now. My slope is 2/3. So let's put your pencil back down at that starting point and say up 2 over 1, 2, 3 and make that point. If you want to go one more, you can. If you want to go the other direction, go down 2 over 3. Whoops. See, that didn't look like a straight line. I put that in the wrong spot. Let's X that one out. And then check your line's slanting up. It's a positive slope. That's a good thing. Okay, pause the video and try the last one. Here, m is -1/5, and the point is -4 and +5. So be very careful that you change the sign. Make sure you write the point down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your point there, and then pick your pencil up, take a deep breath, reset your mind, and think, okay, now I'm thinking about slope. Slope is negative 1/5. This is your starting point. Do not go back to here. Don't start here. That'll mess you up. This is your starting point. So put your pencil here, go down 1 over 5. 1, down 1, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that reminds me of another common thing people will do when they're counting. So another thing that I see with people counting is you count before you move. So just be careful about counting. And so if your points are off just by 1, it might be because you're making this mistake that a lot of kids will make, where you go down 1 and then like you start counting and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have to move your pin for that first step to count. So you go down 1 and then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So be really careful when you count those off. If that's just, it's more common than you think. Maybe you might be looking at that. It's like, well, what do you mean you count wrong? It's like, it's really easy to count wrong. It happens quite a bit when people are doing coordinates and graphing lines. So be careful with your counting there. Okay. And I think it's probably just because it's tough, and probably because there's just so much going on in your brain at once. And so I'd say, like, okay, think about this point, put that point down, and then like reset your mind. And so then like you're starting here, but you're not thinking about negative 4 or 5 anymore. Now you're only focused on negative 1 over 5. You're only focused on that slope. Okay, good luck with this, and reach out if you have questions.